Cool. What's up, guys? So I have Karen Gonzalez here. She's out of Houston, Texas, a rockstar agent with a team, and expand some information about different markets. So I work with a lot of relocation people moving out of California. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of like what's up with Houston and what's up with Karen? What's a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Brandon. I'm excited to get to chat with you more about Houston. I was actually born and raised here, so I love Houston. I know so much about it, and I'm very passionate about living here in the great city. And I've actually been in real estate now for 7 years. So I would definitely consider myself a veteran in the real estate arena. Right now, I have a strong team of three, and we are growing. So we're looking to add some more team members this year because thankfully the real estate market's just been really, really good to us.
7 years. So did you start as a solo agent and now you have your team? And like, when did you start your team?
Yeah, that's right. So I started as a solo agent, and a few years later, that's whenever I hired my first assistant. And then from there, I hired a buyer's agent, which is the structure of our team currently. We have one executive assistant, we have one buyer's agent. As the team leader, I am the one that focuses on all of our listings. And we do also have a part-time marketing coordinator. So she helps us a lot with video and social media and just fun things like that. And so now at the 7 year mark, it's time for us to keep growing, keep expanding.
7 years, almost a decade there. So what's your guys' goal this year?
So our goal this year is to sell 95 homes.
95. That's amazing. So you guys are crushing it out there. 100, almost there. Five more, 100.
Yeah, I guess you could say that's kind of the stretch goal, but kind of
Let's go.
kind of mapping out what we did last year. Our goal this year is 95, and I would love to hit that 100 that you mentioned.
You're gonna crush it. Yeah, it's amazing. So what would you say? I'm looking to move out to Texas, probably for a job transfer, or I'm trying to get out of California, to be frank, as a seller, right? I'm coming over there as a buyer. What are some things that you would recommend somebody considering Houston, Texas? And like, what would you say the first things you do before I actually commit to selling my house? What would you say are like some some pointers that you would recommend that you
Absolutely.
see?
Yeah, so one of the things that you mentioned right off the bat was job transfer. And we actually see a lot of that here in Houston. We have great job stability here. We have so many job opportunities here in Houston. So I would say that would be the number one tip that I actually have would be to have your job or your income already kind of secured because those numbers and that location will kind of help with any other necessities that you might have to take into consideration when moving down here. And also, a lot of the mortgage lenders here in Texas, they do require that you already have proof of income, whether you're working remotely from a different part of the country or you have a new job lined up over here in Houston. They will require proof of income or proof of a job offer or something like that. So that would actually be my number one tip is to already have either your income set up or your job already lined up as well. And that will really help be a guiding light as far as budget and location and things of that nature.
Okay, so definitely at least look into getting a pre-approval to know where you're going to be looking, because they're going to be asking. Same thing here. Like, let's get a pre-approval first, so you know where you're going to be. What would you say the majority of your clients are? Are they a lot of relocations, or is it a lot of local people?
So we work with mostly locals. However, especially at the height of the pandemic, we started doing a lot more relocation business. So New York, Colorado, California, we see a lot of people from those states moving over here. And it's definitely been steadily increasing ever since then.
So you have a lot since the pandemic, like all these different states closing down business, X, Y, and that's what I see from California too. A lot of tons of relocation, Texas, Florida, Arizona, like those more freer states. Um, So is that where are your sellers coming from? Like if you have people selling, are they moving out of state or where are they going?
So a lot of our sellers are primarily coming from our move up buyers right now. So buyers that we helped purchase their first home maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now they're ready for their bigger house, of
Hmm.
their forever home, or maybe a location that they prefer more to start having kids or raise their kids in. Um, Also getting a lot of our listings right now from our baby boomer generation. Um,
Wow,
so a
baby
lot
boomer.
of them are looking to downsize, yeah, or just move in with family and get rid of that house with all that maintenance and things like that that they just don't really care to keep up with anymore.
Yep, yep, definitely two of the main demographics. So, like Houston, geographically speaking, what's kind of the geography, like the weather, how relatable is it, say, to California? I'm not sure if you've been out here, but what can somebody expect out there when they move?
So I have been to California a couple of times, but what I can tell you about the weather here in Houston is the best two words to describe the seasons here is going to be hot and humid. So about 8 months of the year, it's hot and it's humid. Our winters can actually get pretty cold. Sometimes they do fall below freezing. Every now and then we'll get some snow, but that's usually a rare occurrence. But typically here in Houston, it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid. It's already starting to get like into the 80s, sometimes even the low 90s right now. And in the peak summer season, we can sometimes go over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So um,
Humidity
it gets,
though.
yeah, it gets pretty steamy down here.
Yeah. So a little more humid. Wow, already in the 80s. We're rainy over here, and so like SoCal is crazy right now. We have snow, rain. This is so weird, but we need it so much. So, um, what is there to fun to do in Houston as far as entertainment? I know LA is like entertainment capital. Is there anything that somebody from SoCal would be missing out on coming to Houston, or is it pretty much comparable?
So there's a lot to do over here. As you may or may not know, Houston is huge. I mean, from the most northern part, like your Woodlands, your Conroe area, all the way down to Galveston Island. I mean, it's massive here in Houston. So there's a lot of things to do. Closer to downtown, we have the area that is going to be known as the Inside the Loop. So inside the loop, close to downtown, we have lots of music going on, lots of food going on. So we have a lot of music halls, lots of concerts. We have the Houston Symphony there. Lots of restaurants, bars, and places to go out on the weekends. And then
Mhm.
the further and further you kind of expand from the inner loop part of Houston, you're going to have more of like your family friendly activities. So we have a lot of amusement parks here. We have a Space Center Houston, which is where NASA headquarters, and
Right.
that's one of the Fortune 500 companies. So we have a lot more things to do for like the family and like weekend activities, closer to the outskirts of Houston. But there's definitely not a shortage of things to do. Right now, we're actually in the middle of rodeo season. So for a whole month, we have a massive rodeo here in Houston with a concert every single night. So lots of country bands, there's Christian artists, there's even Spanish speaking bands that come down. I mean, it's just the rodeo is probably one of the biggest events of the year in Houston, and like we're really in the thick of it right now.
Wow. So it's happening there right now. Um, that's exciting. It sounds really fun. What are things that outsiders don't have any idea about Houston, like only locals would know about?
So I think a couple of things come to mind. We do have like an underground system here. We have some underground tunnels. So that helps you get around downtown by foot. So if you're looking to maybe you work downtown or you want to explore downtown a little bit, but you want to maybe use the tunnels instead, we do have an underground tunnel system inside the loop. The other thing is that our hurricane season here can get pretty intense. I guess some people may or may not know, but we have a lengthy hurricane season here. So all the way from June to November, which is, a good portion
Wow.
of the year. And during those times, we can get a lot of rain. Sometimes, you'll get a random notice that all schools have been canceled for the next day, because of really heavy rains that can just come out of nowhere. I mean, I think about a month ago, we had this random tornado that just came out of nowhere, and one of the surrounding suburbs, the city of Pasadena, was hit really, really bad. Like the animal shelter was destroyed, a lot of businesses were destroyed. And, that was just another normal week for us in the middle of hurricane season. So the weather is definitely a little bit more intense than it may seem.
So that makes me question, number one, how does your home insurance costs look like out there?
Brandon, that's a great question. So, home insurance cost, I would actually say, is going to be relatively average. However, there are some additional policies that certain parts of Houston do require. So, some of the southern counties in Houston are going to require the wind and the hail coverage. And it's because those counties are closer to Galveston Island, closer to the Gulf, so they can have heavier winds. And those are going to require some additional insurance, as well
Mhm.
as our flood insurance policies here are written completely separate than a hazard policy would, and a wind and hail policy as well. So sometimes that flood insurance policy can really get you. There are some ways to offset the flood insurance as well, depending on how elevated the home is and that sort of thing. But I just bought a property earlier this year on Galveston Island, and I required all three insurances. And considering it was right there on the island, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But nonetheless, I had never paid that much in insurance in my life.
So just to get figures to get familiar with, if you don't mind sharing, what was the acquisition cost for that property? And then what did the figures look like for those insurances?
Absolutely. So I bought a tiny home in Galveston, and I have it on Airbnb now.
Oh,
I want to
cool.
say, yeah, so it's a tiny home. So I want to say the square footage is somewhere around 600. And I purchased that property for $245,000. And collectively, for my hazard insurance, my wind and hail insurance policy, and my flood insurance as well, I paid about $4,000 a
For the
year.
year.
For the year.
Okay. That's good to know. So Airbnb's tiny homes, is that pretty popular right now? It's getting a lot of good traffic.
So Texas is one of the states that is tiny home friendly. Not all states are tiny home friendly. And so we are seeing a little bit more of those container homes, those tiny home communities starting to pop up. Not nearly as much as I would have thought, but they are starting to be built and to be sold for just regular residential clients, but also, short-term rental that are starting to be more trendy here.
Okay. So the state and the city is a lot more friendly with landlords, it sounds like.
Yeah, now don't get me wrong. There are starting to be some surrounding cities that are starting to crack down a little bit more on their short-term rental laws. And so that's something that, especially as a realtor, but also an investor, I have to be mindful of, because I always want to steer my clients in the right direction if they are looking to purchase a short-term rental. We have to carefully review HOA restrictions, and just keep an eye on the local laws that may try and, also restrict too many short-term rentals in the area.
Okay. So it's a lot more, I mean, it's a lot more friendly than LA County. It's probably the one of the worst in the nation to do Airbnbs in right now. But
Oh, wow.
that's really good to know. So another question, I have a lot of people like, Texas, it's No income tax. Okay, but what are you paying in tax? Where do they get you? Is it the property tax?
So our property taxes are going to be a little bit higher here, especially in some of the newer communities. You also have a mud tax. Is that something
Hmm.
that you guys have over there?
A mud tax? Well, that's my first time hearing about it, so no.
So a mud tax is going to be a municipal utility district. That's what MUD stands for. And basically, where new developments are taking place, they're having to run the utilities because we keep on expanding, and
Hmm.
annexing as a city. And so some of these newer communities where they're starting to barely bring in utilities, they have to pay an additional MUD tax as part of their property taxes. And so some of the tax rates are starting to creep higher and higher. So you can see some even as high as, 3.7, 3.9%
Okay.
property tax rate. Now, the good thing about the MUD taxes is that over time they can decrease as the actual MUD begins to be paid off. But property taxes, I know in comparison to other states, they can get a little pricey here, but for us, it's always something that we factor into our client's budget just to make sure that we're staying within their budget.
Okay. Well, that's not as bad as I thought. So on average, it's around mid 3, 4% total property tax.
Yeah, and a lot of the older homes even have a much lower tax rate. We see some as low as like 2.5%. It just really going to depend on the community and
Yeah.
probably the age of the home. So the older the homes here, typically the lower tax rate that they're going to have.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so we do have something like that. They just label it something else. Here they call it Mello-Roos, right? So same thing, different name. The community builds it and pays it, it's they pay it off over time. So yeah, similar. So we got property taxes. That's it. What other kind of expenses do you look out for in Texas that would be a little bit more expensive? Because I mean, how far away are you guys from the coast? Because you were talking about the Gulf.
So we're actually very close. You can get from downtown Houston to Galveston Island, which is on the coast of Texas, in about 45 minutes. If there's traffic, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more. But we are very close. So probably to answer your question, the one thing that really needs to be considered here in Houston is going to be the commute time.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, Houston it's huge and it's only continuing to grow. So you have the center city of Houston, but then you have all these surrounding suburbs that are still kind of considered Houston, especially to an outsider coming in.
Right.
But you have all these surrounding cities. You have Atascocita, you have Katy, you have Pearland, Crosby. Those are all like surrounding that are part of the greater Houston metro. So I think really just taking the time to figure out how much time you want to spend in the car. Because if you're saying you're moving to Houston, it could take you 1 hour during rush hour, to get from one side of Houston to the other. There's, sometimes like memes and jokes going around that if you're in a relationship and your significant other lives on, the north side of town and you live on south side of town, it's still considered a long distance relationship because our commutes here, they can get pretty lengthy. So that's definitely something that I would say you have to be mindful of because Houston is so big and we have so many freeways. A lot of our freeways actually do have tolls, so you have to pay for a lot of those. And so that's definitely something you'd want to consider if you would be spending an extra $100 a month in tolls and an extra $300 a month in gas just to get from point A to point B. Not only would it affect maybe your budget, but also your lifestyle, depending on how much time you're actually going to be willing to spend away from home. So I would say that commute could be the silent deal killer. So make sure that you kind of have a little bit more clarity around where you need to be, where your work is going to be located, where your friends and family are, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. Similar here. So someone says, I'm moving to LA. LA is massive too. And same thing, you could be actually LA, you can go from the top. I'm in Palmdale, so average sales price is around 500, 550. It's gone up with the pandemic, insane. So from Palmdale down to the bottom of LA, it can be up to 2.5 hours just to travel. So same thing with Houston. Are you, as far as bang for your buck goes, you want the best house, and you're willing to commute to the town, to, the main central Houston. Where would you say are those bang for your buck communities where you see online like those videos, a home that costs 300 grand, but you're getting this huge mansion? Is that real?
So it's definitely it's definitely a thing here. Inside the loop, so that location that I was referring to earlier, that's kind of that real central part of Houston, is going to be where you're likely going to have your highest dollar homes. I actually think that just a couple days ago, the highest priced home in Houston ever came up for sale, and that was for 35 million. And so typically that's where you're going to find the priciest of homes would be inside the loop. And then the most bang for your buck is definitely going to be on the outskirts. So on the outskirts of Houston, we have a lot of master planned communities that are starting to be on the rise, and they just have so much to offer. Some of them have schools inside the community. They have, lagoons. Their amenities are just starting to really just go through the roof with everything that they're offering. The community itself will have shops and places to eat. So even though you are technically far away from Houston, you might be 30 miles away from the actual city of Houston, you have your own little area that has everything that you need. So you may not have to commute as far. But a couple of areas that I would say you can get a really good bang for your buck. Katy is a part of Houston that's going to be on the west side. It's really had a lot of growth these past few years, but they're doing a great job of continuing to build at a high standard over there. They also have a really fantastic school district. So I would say you can get a great bang for your buck over in Katy. On the south side of town, we have some areas like Manville and Rocheron where you can also get, really great value. And then on the east side of town, you're probably going to be looking at maybe Crosby. There's some master planned communities coming up in the Crosby area. And then on the north side of town, we're starting to see so much more expansion just past the Woodlands, getting to like Cleveland. I mean, you can get, a huge house on a huge piece of land over there for a really, really great price tag. So if you're looking for, a great bang for your buck, some of these surrounding cities, I mean, you can just have it all and then some over there.
So let's just say Katy, Texas. I don't want to go into all the others, it just take too long. Top dollar, what are you getting for like 3,500 square feet to 4,000 square feet, and then like an entry level 2,000 square feet, relatively new build? Kind of what are those figures looking like?
So for an entry level, let's call it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet in Katy. Depending on the age, but let's go with something a little bit newer, like you said, you're probably still looking at maybe 300,000, right around there. And then a larger home, let's say it's maybe double in size, about 4,000 square feet. You can probably expect around 500,000 or so, and up from there.
So 4,000 square feet, you're getting for 500,000 roughly.
Yeah.
But how's the condition? Is it like 10 out of 10 upgraded, or is it pretty plain Jane?
No, as far as condition goes, I would say for 500,000 in Katy, you're getting something that's really top notch as far as condition and upgrades.
Okay, that's good to know. Where I'm at in Palmdale, 500,000, you're getting an entry level single story. So it's a little bit different, but you can definitely upgrade your lifestyle from here to there. So that's good to know. Cool. So are there any other things that you would, I would say, condense it into just three main points before moving out there to Houston?
Yeah, so first I would definitely go back to the location because it's so big here in Houston. I think it's important to at least maybe have an idea of where you'd want to be. The second thing I would say is going to be just really taking into consideration having a plan during hurricane season. Sometimes you'll know a little bit more in advance that you need to possibly evacuate. Other times it's just really last minute, a storm comes through and you have to be prepared. So I would just say having kind of a game plan as to, okay, what are we going to do? Because once a storm does form and it gets past a certain coordinates on a map, you can no longer get a last minute flood insurance policy. So you really do have to be proactive as possible.
Mm,
And the last thing, I mean, I can't miss the opportunity to kind of just mention myself, but I would definitely have to say get with a great realtor. Because if you don't have clarity around some of these things, a great realtor will help you with that. And they'll really be able to walk you through, your needs, your wants, and take into consideration some of these other factors that you may not be used to, depending on where you're coming from.
absolutely. More research. I didn't know a lot of these things. I didn't know a lot of these things at all. So that's very enlightening. I appreciate your time, Karen. So where can people contact you at directly to reach out for more questions?
Absolutely. So I can be found on Instagram and Facebook at Gonzalez Realty Group, or just shoot me an email. I'm Karen at soldbykg.com.
Okay, we're gonna put that right here. Well, I appreciate your time, Karen. That was super enlightening. I learned a lot about Texas. Definitely gonna be coming out and checking it out over there. Maybe not during hurricane season. And again, when it's hurricane season,
So that's going to be from June to November.
June to November. That's a couple months. It's not short time.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly
Well,
right.
yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate your time and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.